Maliki. He is the High Commissioner of Morocco to India. The next speaker is Her Excellency Ms. Grace Okello. She is the High Commissioner of Uganda to India. As the next speaker, we have His Excellency Mr. Sebastian Beliwine, Charge d'Affaires from the Ghana High Commission, India. Next speaker is Her Excellency Ms. Tahina Rasamoelina, Charge d'Affaires from Embassy of the Republic of Madagascar. As the next and the last speaker of this session is Her Excellency Ms. Tizita Mulugeta, High Commissioner of Ethiopia to India. With this, I hand over the proceedings to Mr. Pramit Pal. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Neha. It's a pleasure to introduce these 5 speakers. I've had the honor of visiting 4 out of these 5 countries. And Ambassador Maliki, of course, is an old friend. And I should add that Ambassador Mulugeta is an alumnus of Addis Ababa University, where my father was a teacher, was a lecturer in the 1960s when it was called Haile Selassie, the first university. And as a result, I spent 4 years of my life in Ethiopia as a child. But anyway, these 5 countries that are represented here come from literally the 4 corners of Africa. Ethiopia and Uganda in the Horn and the East are part of the country. Morocco in the Maghreb. And of course, Ghana in the West. And Madagascar, which is of course a very unusual part of Africa, a unique island, Indian Ocean island state with its very unique history. So it's a great pleasure to have all of them here to speak, and it's useful because Africa, as I'm sure we all remember, is a continent. It is several times the size of India, different parts of Africa. I've had the honor of visiting 17 African countries, and they are as varied as the countries of Asia or any other major continent in the world. And as a consequence, both economically, climatically, and in terms of even their development status, they differ quite strongly. And this is one of the reasons when talking to individual African countries, you realize India needs not just one Africa policy, but actually several Africa policies, because each of these countries, each of these regions is so remarkably different from the other. So I will wait to give more specific answers and commentary because, as I said, I think each of these is a unique country and there are unique aspects. And I will invite His Excellency Ambassador Maliki to begin to give, and I hope all of you will give a very clear view of what you think the India-Africa relationship should be about and what you do for your countries. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pramit. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if it is a blessing or something else to be in the last session, because so many things have been said about the India-Africa these 2 days. Let's finally find out revolving and changing what you are going to say. Then I decided just to go forward probably and then bring the discussions into a certain level and then probably share a few ideas. So for the sake of time, I will be mostly reading. Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I wish to express my sincere thanks and appreciation to the Indian Council of World Affairs for organizing this special event focusing on the relations between India and Africa. I would like to see this opportunity to thank Dr. TCA Raghavan, Director General of ICWA, for taking this initiative. I also want to thank the chair of this session and my friend, Mr. Pramit Pal Chaudhury, the foreign editor of the Hindustan Times. My colleagues, ambassadors, high commissioners, and from Uganda and Ethiopia, and Charge d'Affaires from Ghana and Madagascar. My thanks go to Dr. Nivedita and Dr. Neha Sinha from the ICWA and all the invisible soldiers working behind the scenes. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have been able through different conferences held mainly during the lockdown since March on India-Africa relations to identify where we stand which are the reliable partners, and then where we want to go. We also know where Africa stands and then what it needs from its partners, mainly what it expects from them. Let me go back 6 years back in 2014, and during an official visit to the brotherly African country, Ivory Coast, His Majesty King Mohammad VI said while addressing the Moroccan Ivorian Economic Forum, and I quote, "Africa is required to benefit from all the synergies that it abounds, without living in isolation from the world. Hence, it is called upon to multiply fruitful partnerships with developed countries that demonstrate constant interest, sincere commitment, and tangible engagement for the sake of Africa's economic prosperity and human development." What will come on in my intervention would be into 6 parts for the sake of conciseness and the sake of time. 1. Africa and India do share a lot in common, but most of which is their mutual trust. Most important of which is their mutual trust. There is a tremendous amount of historical bonds and affinities between the two parties, but is it enough to make them move forward? I personally don't think so. This treasure we have is like a battery of a car. It helps start it, but doesn't make it move. It is also as much as you need a good quantity of love to engage in a marriage, but love alone cannot make it long and stand time. So in our case, in our relations, co-development, especially economic growth, is necessary to move and interest each of us, particularly in with business communities. And for this, India-Africa Forum Summit has created, since its inception, enough synergy and strong links between the two parties. But among the previous editions of this summit, I believe the third one, held in New Delhi in 2015, was by large the most successful, as it paved the way to their relations to touch new skies and reach new horizons. And I think figures in terms of investments, in terms of engagement, in terms of trade are here to corroborate this. 2. As for COVID-19, I think enough literature has been written about this virus, and it is not my intention to delve into the difficulties it provoked for all countries, including African and then India. But as much as it was and still is a real challenge to our economies and to our health sectors, it has also the merit of redefining priorities to each country and to every one of us, depending on the scale of the affection and then the weight of every economy. It has also proven that the human being and its safety are the most precious things we all have to preserve. To reach this, you need to ensure full security and have a good, sound health system and infrastructure. These have become the priority of the priorities. These stand and are, to my mind, the essential elements now that we need to reinforce after COVID-19. As for the important things, because I am distinguishing between the essential and the important things, those are essential. Important things, beside these, we can find education, preserving the environment for our future generation out of the obligation and duty we have vis-à-vis our children. Under each of these essential and important sectors and elements, we can enumerate so many subtitles like transfer of technologies, telemedicine, vocational trainees, and we can go on and on. 3. Why I have chosen to speak about these elements under the banner of COVID-19? It's because they may, and for me should, constitute the pillars of our next India-Africa Forum Summit, IAFS 4. And my belief, with the pace we are thankfully moving towards the utilization of the vaccine against this deadly virus, we should in 6 or 8 to 8 months be able to come back to normalcy, hopefully, and hence back to business. We will then be able to hold this important and flagship event of our relations, which will constitute the framework of our partnership for the next 5 years. I firmly believe that it is high time we started our preparation for our next summit, at least on the level of documentation and on the level of consultations, to make it meet our aspirations and raise our expectations because they are very high. 4, we, as diplomats, officials, and civil servants, think tanks, have these habits, good or bad. It is not for me to judge at this stage, of thinking on behalf of others at the moment when our economic development is at the heart of our future relations, and then at the heart of IAFS itself. Because politically, I am convinced we share almost an exemplary mutual understanding, and we have fairly great amounts of common views and common issues on those of mutual interest. Hence, the importance of engaging with the business communities for the next IFS, to think business instead of always thinking of and setting the path for them. I am not certainly demeaning our role here. On the contrary, it is important to create necessary environment and legal framework to facilitate and ensure a business-friendly environment for all of them. So their role, I believe, is as much important as ours. 5, based on this analysis and belief, I think it is important and even crucial for the business communities to organize an economic forum of a large scale between Indian and African countries to empower them and let them decide what is best for them. It is with them, by them, and for them. Maybe it is more opportune to organize it before the summit, as these people and these business communities will ensure the implementation of projects they would have selected or proposed to be endorsed by the heads of state and governments. I leave it to you as such for the time being. 6, and I am closing here. I remain pretty confident that India has all the chances to gain premium place in Africa's relations due to the emotional and historical strong links it has built for decades with most of the African countries, if not all. In this respect, I would like to say that India is well placed among all the existing different development forums and partners to have a more important place and role to play in Africa, owing to the respect it enjoys throughout the continent. In fact, the rise of the African continent as a key factor in the contemporary world is the common objective of Morocco and India, which believe that any broader global rebalancing is incomplete without the genuine emerging of Africa. I thank you for your attention and then leave you the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador. I will now ask Ambassador, the High Commissioner Okello to speak. Is she here? I think then we'll move on. Is Ambassador His Excellency Beliwine? I don't see him on my screen either.
He's there, Chair. You need to unmute yourself, Excellency.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, yes, we can hear you. I can't see you, however.
Oh.
You may want to switch on your video.
This one.
Chair, his video is switched on.
We can see
him.
You can see him. You can
Okay, you can please go ahead.
You can proceed here.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Let me begin by
Okay.
sending warm greetings to the Ambassador of Morocco, the Ambassador of Ethiopia, the High Commissioner of Uganda to India, my colleague from Madagascar, and all who have linked up and listening to us. Let me also join previous speakers in thanking the authorities of ICWA for the invitation extended to me to participate in this webinar. on India and Africa relations, and in particular to share my thoughts on the way forward. There is no gainsaying that the India-Africa Forum Summit has been an effective official platform for the strengthening of the historical, political, economic, and cultural connections between India and the African continent since 2008. A lot, however, has already been said on the state of the relations, achievements, challenges in all such relations since yesterday, and I have therefore decided to proffer some suggestions that could translate into tangible realities for further strengthening of the India-Africa relations. To begin with, India could leverage on its enormous capability in the ICT sector to enhance the African institutions by delivering online courses and also promote e-schools between Africa and India. This is more compelling now due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, which has had severe impact on the economies of African countries, the health and educational sectors. Secondly, the annual Confederation of Indian Industry, CII, and Exim Bank Conclave on India-Africa Project Partnership has been recognized as one of the most effective forums that bring India and the African continent closer together to take stock of the past and chart a path in the strengthening of the relationship between India and Africa in several areas, including economic cooperation, trade and investment, agriculture, energy, infrastructure, education, and skills development. In that regard, it would be prudent for the CII to strengthen a mechanism by which it can collaborate with its counterparts in Africa. For example, the Association of Ghana Industries, and such associations exist in all the African countries on a regular basis, especially in between the annual conclaves, to share experiences and best practices. This will enable the African trade, industry, and investment associations and chambers to benefit from the Indian experience and for the CII to better understand the African situation in terms of trade and industry. Trade. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCTA, one of the flagship projects of the African Union Agenda 2033, is a critical response to Africa's developmental challenges. It has a potential to enable Africa to significantly boost intra-African trade and improve economies of scale through an integrated market. It also has the potential to be a catalyst of industrial development, placing Africa on a path to exporting value-added products and improving Africa's competitiveness, both in its own markets and globally. It further sends a strong signal to the international investor community that Africa is open for business based on a single rule book for trade and investment. It is common knowledge that Africa is a continent with a market of 1.2 billion people with a combined GDP of 3.4 trillion. It also boasts of over 400 African companies that earn annual incomes of 1 billion or more. India should take advantage of these opportunities and strengthen further the impressive trade and investment relations between India and African countries. Furthermore, in the area of education and skill development, it will be prudent if, under the public-private partnership training program, Indian and African businesses could set up skills development units in African industrial zones with the aim of training African engineers, technicians, managers, and other workers. This will go a long way to guarantee technology transfer in various sectors, including agriculture, food processing, and agribusiness. It is equally important for both sides to encourage wider private sector participation in the promotion and improvement of industrialization with accompanying technology transfer to African countries in the framework of partnership for mutual benefits. It's equally important that India and Africa should collaborate to ensure that public investment, services, and policies for agriculture are given the required priority to support and complement the efforts of smallholders' own investment, particularly women and youth in agriculture. Time will not permit me to expatiate more. I would therefore like to conclude on an observation by my High Commission to the effect that over-reliance on the India Exim Bank lines of credit, LOC, with all its procedures, and technicalities to finance infrastructure projects in Africa is affecting the drive of Indian companies to win bids for such projects. Therefore, we suggest to Exim Bank and the relevant Indian government authorities to consider granting buyer's credits to Indian companies investing in Africa on similar terms as the LOCs. Once again, I thank the Indian Council of World Affairs for organizing this webinar, and thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beliwine. I'll now ask Her Excellency Rasamoelina of Madagascar to go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, Dr. Nivedita, Ray, Dr. Neha, Sinha, distinguished participants, it is an honor for me to represent Madagascar at this conference. Allow me, Mr. Chair, to begin by congratulating of the Malagasy government and on behalf of the Embassy of Madagascar, ICWA, who has organized this event. We are all aware that the current situation demands a lot of our attentions, but the initiative to organize an India-Africa conference brings to the fore a subject that is dear to us all and insufflates optimism that a relationship between Africa and India has a role to play in the post-COVID-19 world. So congratulations to ICWA for having gathered around this subject so rich and well-versed panelists, and thank you for the opportunity given to Madagascar to share its vision of Africa-India relations, and particularly Madagascar-India cooperation, the way forward. During the session yesterday, a very straightforward question was raised, and it has been, what does India mean for Africa? The successive distinguished speakers have elaborated on the benefits of cooperation between African countries and India, and we all have admitted that these benefits go far beyond Africa and India themselves. The world will gain from a strong cooperation and solidarity between African countries and India. And as far as Madagascar is concerned, the answer from us is straightforward to India is a partner country, a friend country, a brother country. India and Madagascar have relations rooted in history. We've had common stand against colonialism. Now we have a common stand for South-South cooperation, and we stand together for friendship among people, for human dignity. So we have no difficulty to qualify India a partner, a friend, and a brother country, because we identify very much with the ideas, the values, and the principles India stands for. India considers the world as a family. We Malagasy, through our attachment to Fiavanana, we are for the edification of a more peaceful, a more just, a more equitable world. And on the international scene, we are guided by attachment to mutual respect, equality and independence and territorial integrity, and this attachment to territorial integrity animates us, Madagascar, to claim for the return of the 4 Malagasy islands, Nusi Sambacha, Nusi Keli, Nusi Ampela, Nusi Bedimaka, who has not been returned to Madagascar after independence. And as regards to global issues, Madagascar is for multilateralism, which is inclusive. As a member of the African Union, we aspire that Africa is given a permanent seat within the UN Security Council. We want more African seats within the non-permanent non-permanent members. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, with the leadership of President Rasamoelina, Madagascar is determined to emerge out of poverty, and in this task, we welcome partnerships from various countries. The point was raised yesterday as to whether China's footprint will restrict India's engagement in Africa. As far as Madagascar is concerned, the answer is no, no exclusivity. No country can claim the exclusivity for cooperation with the great island. We are open to multiple forms of partnerships, G2G cooperation, B2B partnership. We are open to PPPs, Indian investors and private sectors, Indian tourists are welcome to Madagascar. Rules and regulations are there to facilitate the creation of prosperity. Our presidents have set the priorities for this determination to emerge out of poverty, and they are to secure peace and security inside Madagascar, but also security within our maritime space. It is also to create jobs, to give more access to energy, to set up industries locally, and to add values to our natural resources, to education, capacity buildings, and youth empowerment, health and well-being of population. These are areas which Madagascar wants to work with India, and we believe that India has a strong and proven expertise in all these sectors. In 2018, our relations have received a strong impetus through the visit of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of India, Shri Natram Govind. And we have worked together in the field of agriculture, in the promotion of solar energy, in education. Many Malagasy public servants have benefited from ITEC program. I myself have been a former alumni of the Indian training program for foreign service, so I know it. So now Madagascar would like to deepen cooperation with India. Maritime cooperation is underway, and our two countries work hand in hand in the Indian Ocean towards more rational and sustainable exploitation of maritime resources. So these are, Mr. Chair and ladies and gentlemen, the vision of Madagascar concerning the way ahead as regard to cooperation between India and Madagascar. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I ask now the last speaker, Ambassador Dr. Tizita Mulugeta from Ethiopia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Excellencies, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a pleasure to me to participate in this interesting session, and I would like to thank the organizer, ICWA, for the opportunity. I would also like to thank Mr. Chair, Mr. Pramit, for your nice compliment you have given at the beginning of this session. Though I was not fully following up the session, I hope a lot of interesting points have been raised and discussed, and I believe such kind of sessions are necessary to bring contemporary realities on the front, and also to work for more collaboration on emerging prospects. And as it is very well known, India and Africa have been historically connected through culture, economics, and politics. And the roots for India's engagement with Africa in the historical context were focused more on the continent's eastern coast, especially around the Horn of Africa, and Ethiopia as being the first African country to open its embassies in New Delhi in 1948 has got the opportunity to start the official diplomatic relations very early and also to benefit from the mutual relations, especially in terms of education. And in Ethiopia, there is no one who was raised without watching Bollywood films. And relation in Ethiopia is also, especially in terms of education, is very successful. And every of us were taught by at least one Indian teachers at home. So it all includes all spheres of capacity building schemes, scholarships, ITC, and short-term training. And Indian development aid has also been augmented with digital initiatives focusing on education and medicine, the tele-education and telemedicine initiatives that focused on awarding 15,000 scholarship to African students from the inception in 2019 through to 2024 is also one of the things that is worth to be mentioned, where Ethiopia is also one of the main beneficiary of this initiative. And also much of Indians' narratives as it's related to engagement with Africa has focused on capacity building. This seems a key tenet for the Prime Minister's Modi's government engagement strategy with Africa, that is building local capacity to increase leverage and agency among African nations. And now India is Africa's third largest trading partner, which accounts for 6.4% of African total trade, for a total value of $62.6 billion in 2017 and 18. Similarly, India is the trading partner of Ethiopia, where more of the balance of trade is against Ethiopia. And I believe there is a need to narrow the gap in the trade relation. And in area of trade and investment, the capacity and opportunities as much as possible must be multiplied. And it encompasses new initiatives like solar energy, which is like an emerging opportunity in Africa. In addition, I'm always impressed by Indian technologies that can be easily adapted to our nation, and taking the readiness and potential in Africa and goodwill from India's perspective, our relation agendas have to give a priority for technology transfer beyond setting incubation and also different kind of demonstration centers. And undoubtedly, Africans praised India's efforts to set up these centers, which are key factor towards development. However, India can expand its outreach that benefit both. First, it can work to enhance Indo-African engagement in different fields that ensures African participation and need assessment as a nation. So far, it is good, and there is also a need to evaluate our successes and setbacks. I believe a regular evaluation of our success and also our drawbacks would help us for better collaboration in the future. And second, there are also untapped areas of relation, particularly in the area of health, in the area of tourism, and also in the area of media. For instance, these days we read about a rising number of Indians will make a tour around the world. The rough estimates of Indian, like 50 million Indian, this is really surprising. And I urged we African need to have these people in our country. So there must be a government initiatives in promoting our tourism resources in the Indian public. Many African airlines, including Ethiopian Airline, has many customers that travel to India for medical tourism. And there is an interest to establish branches of Indian hospitals in Africa based on mutual benefits. So as a bridge, we have to strengthen the telemedicine schemes in transferring the know-how that is found in India. So this could be like one of the things that we can collaborate ahead in the future. The other is media. Media in India is vibrant, unlike many African countries, and Africa can learn a lot from the media in a diverse way, where peaceful coexistence and democracy flourished a lot in India. However, the coverage of African news and African stories by Indian media is very limited. And we need to work to narrow this gap. In addition, the media, as always, they get their news from one or very limited sources. And sometimes we observe when this media narrate the stories in a different way or in a negative manner. So I urge medias and also think tanks, especially big think tanks, to work collaboratively with embassies to get first-hand information. By doing so, we can develop the relationship between Africa and India, and also we can provide new news with reliable from reliable sources, and Indian societies would know a lot about Africa, especially more of like the positive news about Africa. And I personally witnessed the vibrant media, and as an African, we can learn a lot from the Indian federalism system. And the Indian government should also encourage Africans to learn more from its successful political system. India-Africa policy was solidified under the current government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. As India seeks to raise its global profile, Africa is both a reliable partner and an outlet for its policy. COVID-19, of course, has temporarily disrupted growth in Africa and India and almost in the globe. And the current Indian government appears to have a coherent African strategy, a strategy that enables to collaborate more, even in terms of COVID. A lot has been done, but still I expect a more and better cooperation would come through COVID-19 treatment and also a COVID-19 vaccine. So Africa is always ready to work closely and learn and also adapt different kind of technologies that are found in India. As we have seen so far, most of the relation focused on like capacity building, but capacity building alone, as per my thought, will not suffice. So India will need to present a more energetic strategy, not only in the development assistance, but also in the financial aid. There is a need to expand the Exim Bank policies that really give support to Indian companies seeking to expand in Africa and also financing strategic sector in Africa. So a lot has been done in like revising different kind of drawbacks from the Exim Bank sides to sit down and to review what are like the blocking in the relation, in the financial relation between the Exim Bank and Ethiopian, African companies or African demand as a whole. If all the drawbacks in regard to financial system would be resolved, I think there would be more collaboration in investment and also trade between India and Africa. Finally, I would say as an Africa is raising, and my country Ethiopia is also opening up its economic policies and making its investment policies more attractive than ever before. With the leadership of our Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, Ethiopia is working a lot to make the country a center of tourist attraction and also a center of textile and pharmaceutical hub of Africa, especially by constructing 10 world-class industrial zones. So we are aggressively working with our Indian partner, and there is a lot to be done in the future. So I would say let's celebrate as an African and also with our Indian partner. Let's celebrate our success stories together, and also let's work for more collaboration. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just one last thing. Did the High Commissioner Akello join in the end? I don't think so. So let me just then turn to just ask a few questions. Just I think one question really to each of the ambassadors to have a discussion. So Ambassador Maliki, you have made it clear that you feel that the India-Africa summit was a great success, but you are concerned that the agenda, if you wish, for the next summit has not been put together yet, and there are lack of consultations. Have you raised this with the Indian government, and do you feel you're not getting a response, or do you feel that this is simply something that right now the pandemic has put on hold?
Naturally, we talk about everything because we are real partners, and also there is a high level of trust and frankness. But the mood of COVID has put like a shuttering what should be done, and then as long as we are in this setting, and then what is the deadline for the vaccines to come? Once all these parameters have been declared, I'm sure that the preparation will be going on. And when I say that we should start preparation, doesn't mean that's probably from the other Indian side. It has not started. I'm sure that there's so much have been done, but at this level of scale, with the last time I think 37 heads of states and governments, it's a huge organization, a huge preparation. Consultation between the different parties is as equally important, and then as such we need to start probably the more earlier is the better the results should be. That's why I said them in my speech, where I tried to put only to touch upon few elements, but the business community is probably the business forum has its place to be prepared, because what we are looking for is not necessarily some political engagement, but much more engagement into economics. Then let the business communities and the economics and the people who do trade and then speak about the success stories which have in both sides. Can tell you that many people don't know that the largest public Moroccan investments in all Asia exist in India. So there is always room to be there and here. And then when we decided to help India to reach in full security, we decided not as a political decision, but as a commitment to help and to get ensure full security. That's a domain where we can work really closely, because we have, and then Her Excellency Tizita knows it quite well, we are also into close collaboration with Ethiopia for fertilizers. We are building there one of the biggest fertilizer complexes for the market there, and then also for some African countries. So there is room for us to collaborate, and then we need to engage these companies, states-based or private companies, to start talking and then express themselves in preview of the forum. We shouldn't, as politicians, as diplomats, as functionaries, as civil servants, even think tanks, and then think tanks at a certain level, their role is very important, because also they serve as a link with the government and then with the other stakeholders. Prepare this, and then once ICWA to focus on the business side also, not only on the economic side. That's sort of the ideas which I wanted to.
That I'm getting from all of you here is the idea that besides the Exim Bank CIA conclave, as well as, of course, the India-Africa summit, we need more intermediary, especially in the economic business side, meetings. Would you argue, therefore, but rather than having perhaps a giant India, and there is, of course, the India-Africa Energy Summit that is held by the Ministry of our Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. There's an argument for more smaller meetings. And would you argue that these should be sectoral, in other words, or should these be regional, or should these even be just bilateral? What would you Ambassador Maliki, Ambassador Tizita, and others may want to comment.
I'd allow me to just take 1 or 2 minutes about this. The priorities which were in IAFS 3 will not be the same in IAFS 4 because of what's happening onwards, because of what our colleagues raised in terms of importance to have closer collaboration in health sectors, in transfer of technologies, and then telemedicines, and then so forth. To me, once we decide we agree on the priorities or the pillars of the next IAFS 4, then those concerned business communities in the countries which are in the domain, in the areas which have been identified, should meet and decide. I mean, we shouldn't look it into the other way around. We would say that the summit has decided 10 or 20 billion or 5, whatever it is, in these sectors. Probably we could readjust the amounts, then everybody is concerned. That is the Exim Bank, our banks, our network banking, all are concerned. But the concerned people, the implementing bodies are always the business community. So it doesn't, for me, it doesn't look quite comprehensive from our side not to have them completely engaged and then tell us what they view and then how they see things and how they want things to be moved. And then what is the way forward? We have our limits as politicians and diplomats also. That's the only thing. I mean, to bring all the synergies together. I'm not demeaning the work we are doing. I'm not demeaning the work of the Exim Bank, though I have little bits of some critics in regards to the slowness of the work of the bank because of the bureaucracy. And I think it needs also more presence physically, but also through banks in African countries to ensure a larger connection, a larger presence in these countries. I proposed it already, and then through a private bank in Morocco, which is present in 33 countries. And then there is a thinking of collaborating and then using the network of the Moroccan banks that are quite, they are development banks as well. They are giving loans, they are helping also small and medium companies. So why couldn't we have joint initiatives? That's what I'm looking for. Joint initiatives between India and then African countries. I'm sure that Ethiopia is excellent in few sectors. Morocco is as such, and then Ghana is as such. There is Madagascar or whoever. Every country has a little bit of experience and expertise more than others. These countries can also have joint initiatives for the development of African countries with the help of the India through the IAFS. So I think it has a trilateral cooperation in a larger scale, where everybody will find themselves.
Would Ambassador Tizita, Mr. Beliwine, or Rasamoelina like to make a comment as well on this?
Okay, may I say something?
Of course.
Okay, yes, basically the main agenda might be decided by the Indian Africa Summit, as it has been always done, both the agenda or the amount. But after that thing has been decided, it has to directly go down to the earth, especially to the stakeholders. So when we call about who are the stakeholders, it's like the business people, maybe Ministry of Finance, or the banking, different kind of banks that are found in individual countries. So I always question how much the interest of these stakeholders are involved during the implementation of such programs. If you see, for instance, what has been decided like some 5 or some years before, how far evaluation has been done regarding the success of different projects that got money from the Exim Bank. Were all were successful? How much was like default? What was the good reason for that? You see, such kind of evaluation has been done, should be done now and then. Otherwise, if the issue is always like to preach, some amount of money has been given from the Indian side to the African, you see, it doesn't mean anything. Of course, there is a lump sum, but how much of this lump sum has really gone down to the earth, and people of different African countries or different companies has used and get benefited? So as much as possible, it's good, like all the necessary stakeholder took place, like part in like regular meetings, regular evaluation, and also it has to be to some extent also in sector-wise. You see, my country could be good in like pharmaceutical or health sector. Some country like Morocco could be like in fertilizer or whatever kind of things. See, so all the amount, all the things that are involved in such a financial relation should take into consideration the real situation of each country and also sectoral divisions. If that would be done in that way, I think we could go further in a more better way. Otherwise, it would be like story will repeat itself. So some kind of policy revision need to be done in that case. Yeah.
Can I just intervene in this?
Of course,
Mr. Chaudhury?
Dr. Ray.
Yeah, this question, this point, I think Ambassador Tizita has raised a very important point. Yesterday also we discussed on this. If you remember, if you see our document in the India-Africa Forum Summit declaration that we had, one specific aspect that was introduced was monitoring and evaluation. Yesterday also we discussed how could you go forward with evaluation methods. If you look at our projects, much of things are in a bilateral mode. Have we, country-wise, bilaterally thought of making an evaluation and monitoring about this from both sides, not from only India, but joint evaluation? Have any initiatives or any ideas in that front where we can look at methodology of how to evaluate the kind of initiatives that have been taken and implemented, both in LOC sector and also the capacity building initiatives that we are doing through ITEC? How relevant are our training programs much to the local economy in the respective countries? Something in this aspects need to be looked at in terms of methodology that we can adopt for joint evaluation of projects that are happening, because much of the projects that are happening is bilateral. Thank you.
Hello?
Mr. Beliwine, you wish to speak. Please
Yes.
go ahead.
I made a point that it will be prudent for the CII to keep in constant collaboration with
Right.
the national associations of industry, like the Ghana Association of Ghana Industries. My line of thinking is that the Association of Ghana Industries is made up of captains of industry in Ghana. The CII is also made up of captains of industry in India. In the case of India, it is more of a well-established institution or an association that has had enormous impact on the development of India and collaboration with the rest of the world, especially Africa. Now, the situation in Africa can be better understood by the Indian captains of industry when they collaborate with their counterparts on a country basis. For now, at least I know they have regional basis offices, like I think for West Africa is in Nigeria. They organize this, which is not an annual, sometimes maybe in 2 years, 3 years, but it will be good to have it on a national basis so that the African captains of industry who form the associations can learn from how CII made it to the level to which they are now. And for the CII to also understand what actually goes on in terms of establishing and moving an industry forward in Africa, and to work with the Indians to better promote better trade and investment. That's the point I was trying to make. Thank you.
Just one thing, Mr. Beliwine, you'd also mentioned, however, that you wanted India to promote e-education. But I Is Ghana not covered by the Indira Gandhi National Open University Network, which I thought was quite large in Africa?
Yes. The point I'm trying to make there is that it's not a countrywide program. We have 10 regions, now 16 regions in Ghana. It is not the whole country that is covered.
Okay.
And having been born and brought up in the most remote part of the country, at this time, if you are not in the capital of a region, you are most likely not going to be connected.
Yeah.
And you cannot participate in what they call online classes. The governments are not also prepared to roll back the academic year for reasons that we all understand. So the point I'm trying to make is, how can we get the whole country connected so that irrespective of where you were born or you are born or you are living, you should be able to continue with your education, whether in a pandemic situation or other situations. That's the point I was trying to make.
So I think that one of the things that also comes through, one of the things I should mention, and perhaps you'll have some feedback, if there are this concerns about the Exim Bank and its slowness. And I think one of the things we all know is that one of the reasons for that was the original set of Exim Bank actions in Africa led to a few corruption issues, which therefore resulted in the government of India shutting or introducing large layers of bureaucracy and clearances to stop that from happening. But the second part of it, which is something I hope, this pressure from the African side would be important, is that the Exim Bank remains a subsection of the Indian Finance Ministry. It is not an actually independent bank. It doesn't function even on a World Bank level of independence. It has to clear everything from a set of bureaucrats in the Finance Ministry. And when I have discussed this with Exim Bank, they said, we'd like to be more independent, but somebody has to lobby on our behalf, because if we say it, the Finance Ministry ignores us. So one of the things at some point, African ambassadors, governments, heads of state, whenever they interact with their Indian counterparts, is to urge that Exim Bank be given at least the degree of freedom that other multilateral financial institutions receive. Otherwise, it literally has to, not only its own internal bureaucracy, but then it has to, on top of that, the India Finance Ministry, including very often the finance minister herself, has to clear large things, which results, of course, because they have so many other things on minister, have so many other things on the table. This is the last thing that tends to get signed. So it's something I think the African side should also push. It helps the Indian side reform if we get that type of feedback. I think one of the key messages is very clear that the India-Africa forums should start to be put together. Even we at the Indian government, as we know, have struggled even with the G20. We've had to push back our chairmanship one more year because we are far from ready to stage to host the G20 summit a year from now, 2 years from now. And I think one of the things is particularly true for Ghana and maybe for the others. I'm less familiar with their situation, but Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa have very vibrant startup cultures. You're starting to see the real starts of venture capital markets and so on. And the regulation of those markets and how that functions is something I suspect India could help in. We are still working on it ourselves, but I would argue, for example, simple things like the regulation of the digital economy, venture capital structures. Given that our development standards are much similar to Africa, we perhaps have something to pass on to that. We know that Kenya, I think we're already working to some degree on that front. But I have a suspicion that countries, I believe Ghana, Nigeria, and others are also moving on a similar front. And I'm also glad to see that 2 of the 4 ambassadors represented here are francophone. And as you both know, the Indian side neglected the francophone Africa story for many decades. We tended to be focused almost solely on the Anglophone and a little bit on the Portuguese side. I'll also add somebody had mentioned about medical tourism. I think Ambassador Tizita and the idea of medical development. I do know that one of the programs we had attempted was in Mozambique. At the request of the Mozambican ambassador, Indian private sector hospitals had gone there to see if they could set up medical facilities. And they ran into it. When I've asked them how they succeeded, they said it was impossible because, at least in the case of Mozambique, I don't think this would be true for your four countries. We ran into a huge skilled manpower problem. They did not have the necessary requisite doctors, nurses. Even something simple as nurses, they said, was almost impossible. It was not a necessary number. So without that manpower, we failed. And they went back and they told the Indian government, we have to start with the manpower training. And I think all of you have mentioned the importance of skill training. Education is something India can contribute greatly to. I believe we're already doing that a little bit, though perhaps we made a mistake of routing a lot of that through the African Union. We've come to our time, but I really would like to ask if anybody would like to make some final comments. You can please do so, because I think you've all come up with some very good concrete suggestions and concerns regarding India, Africa, and your respective countries. Okay, with that, I think we've
If
come.
you allow me, just
Sure.
yes, probably also it is high time to think of joining very good synergies from Africa to be part of the forum, instead of making it only between, for instance, India forward towards Africa. Why shouldn't we think of as I said, the joint initiatives? We are well involved, for instance, especially in the Francophone areas. We are the first African nation investor in Western Africa, and then we are the second largest investor in all African after South Africa. So we have acquired a good amount of experience that we could share.
Right.
And then we are also willing to go together with developing countries, with reliable partners. And I'm thinking of few things which are the flagship of the cooperation, which could be like the energy, in which we are quite well established, well known. We can also go for food security. We can go together in banking. We can go together. So there are elements in which we could involve few countries in the manner of view of the TICAD, for instance, with Japan, in which there is always a possibility of having, because bringing all the trainings so all along towards Africa becomes expensive, both for the countries there and then for India. Having a center or somewhere in different regions where this could be done is, I think, is cost effectiveness. And then instead of using, for instance, $1 for only one thing, we can use $1 for two things. So it is also rationalizing the funds. This is something I want to bring to the audience, because it's quite important. We should also think how to move together instead of having this one way go up or one way go down. We can also enlarge our scope and then looking into. I'm sure that every country of us has something to develop and then to share and then to contribute for the development of Africa. Because what we tend to forget always is that somehow this COVID has proved that Africa was able to sustain by itself. It has enough resources, enough food security. It has enough, something which was almost unimaginable, but when the reality comes, people have survived. And in fact, even the infections are less because of the ability of the immunity, because of the structure of the countries there. So I think there are a few elements which should be integrated in our mind into developing the relations and to make them forward and then to a higher standards. As I told you, the expectations are very high because India sounds very positive for all Africans from wherever you go. So India has a very positive image which could be used and utilized largely, and is still a little bit less exploited. And definitely, if there is any larger space to be given to different partners, India would certainly get one of the best shares, if not the best share.
you. So I think
May I say one thing?
that's Ambassador Tizita.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I just want to comment on the education side. As it has been repeatedly said, education is one of the things that India has very good relation with most countries, especially with the African countries. Still, many students are coming from African countries to look for opportunities in different institutions in India. And this is one of the things that India has to be proud and one of the flagship of India, I think. But these days, such a positive image of India's education started to be like ruined because of different irregularities. So I wish if there is some kind of mechanism that can regulate the relationship between different education institution in India and African countries. There must be something that regulates. Otherwise, all the positive image that we know before is like getting ruined. In addition to that, while technology transfer is one of the things that we are working on, especially in terms of education, but so far, I don't think that many African countries like have access to health-related education. Of course, we are allowed to send our students and like in different part of in different institutions, but not in like most medical institutions. Maybe I wish if there is some kind of review on this thing, it would also enhance the relationship between India and Africa. Thank you so much.
Well, I think, Dr. Roy, would you like to say anything else?
No, I think we have got some very excellent suggestions and recommendations. All the points are well taken, particularly on the aspects of education and economic trust that we need to build upon. And that has to be really given thrust in terms of building a relationship, which Ambassador Maliki has very rightly pointed out. And most importantly, I think we need to look bilaterally as well as sectorally, how can we move forward in whether it is energy or whether it's education or health. But health has become an important aspect. I would add that, so much initiatives that India has put up in our Foreign Summit initiatives and with allocated funds. But it's necessary to see how these funds are really allocated in terms of health initiatives, particularly post-COVID-19. And one point that Ambassador Maliki has said about the COVID situation, Africa is one example where we are seeing that it has not been affected the way other parts of the world has been affected. So much to learn from Africa also. It's just not about India. When we talk of two-way partnerships, it need to be learning from each other as well. One point that has been stressed also about education initiatives that India has taken, we need to also promote how our Indian scholars can also benefit from a lot of education institutions from Africa. This is something that has been pointed against stress, but we have not been focusing much on that. Need to be walked about university networks of various countries in Africa and association of universities within Africa, how we can connect to that in terms of promoting education collaboration. I think there's a lot of recommendations and suggestions. We can look forward to building on that later. Thank you all.
Thank you. I'd just like to add that one of my other positions, of course, as many of you will know, I'm a fellow at the Ananta Aspen Center, which is a sort of convening center rather than a think tank. But one of the things I do handle is their Africa newsletter. And it's very clear that there's a lot of interest. The newsletter subscription list has now passed 50,000, and most of these are businessmen and bureaucrats in India. And I'm hoping most of you are getting this newsletter. You should tell me. If you don't, please send me your email. And but it's a clear evidence of the degree of interest there is in Africa. But we need structures to convert that interest into tangible results, as all four of you have described. With that, I'm happy to bring this session to a close.
Thank you, Mr. Pramit Pal, and thank you, Dr. Nivedita Ray, for chairing and moderating the session. Thank you to all the panelists. I think we had a very interesting panel discussion in which we got a lot of insight on the subject and also a lot of innovative and good recommendations. I wish to extend my deepest gratitude to all the speakers in the panel for their wonderful insight. Thank you once again, Excellencies. In conclusion, on behalf of ICWA, it is my privilege to propose a formal vote of thanks. Distinguished panelists, participants, guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you all. We have now come to the end of the two-day very engaging webinar on India and Africa, looking ahead, contemporary realities and emerging prospects. Over the last 2 days, our distinguished panelists debated and exchanged ideas on various aspects, and several observations were made by the panelists with excellent recommendations. I would not like to summarize those, as some of the key observations and recommendations have already been posted in various social media platforms by ICWA. First and foremost, I would like to place on record my sincere thanks to Shri Rahul Chhabra, Secretary in Economic Relations, Ministry of External Affairs, India, for sharing his very useful insight in the inaugural address. I would also like to thank Dr. TCA Raghavan, DG ICWA, for his very valuable thoughts that he shared in the opening remarks, which in particular set the context for the discussion in this two-day webinar, and for his guidance and support in organizing the webinar. Special thanks to His Excellency Mr. L.M. Woldemariam, Dean of African Diplomatic Corps in India, Eritrea, and His Excellency Kwate Thomas Kwesi, Deputy Chairperson, African Union Commission, for gracing us with their valuable time, input, and presence in the webinar. I would take this opportunity to thank all the distinguished chairs for various sessions, Ambassador Ashok Mukherjee, Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, Ambassador Vishwanathan, Ambassador Dinesh Patnaik, and Mr. Pramit Pal Chaudhury for chairing the session and sharing their very useful insight and observation on the respective themes. I would like to express my sincere thanks to all the distinguished speakers from overseas and India for their very thoughtful presentation and valuable recommendations that have been provided in the session. And I hope that these key lessons that have been outlined will further help India and Africa to enhance and make our cooperation more meaningful. I would like to thank our distinguished invited participants from various think tanks and universities for their comments and observations. In organizing this webinar at ICWA, I would like to thank DDG Mr. Somen Bakshi for his valuable guidance and support. My sincere thanks to Ms. Nutan Kapoor Mahavar, JS ICWA, and her office for their constant support towards the preparation of this webinar. I would be failing in my part if I don't express my gratitude to Director Research, Dr. Nivedita Ray, for her constant support, guidance, and valuable inputs in organizing this webinar. I would also like to thank Dr. Sankalp Gurjar for coordinating and extending his help in organizing the webinar. I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to the research faculty for their support, in particular the rapporteurs, for covering the sessions. Special thanks to my colleagues at the IT and seminar section for ensuring the smooth running of the webinar. Last but not the least, my gratitude to all the audience for joining us from different parts of the world and for your valuable participation in this webinar. With this, I would like to close my remarks and announce the end of the webinar. Once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.